The café is quiet. Soft morning light. A few people reading. A few people working. The interviewer steps inside, looking around with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. The interviewer asks, I have an interview scheduled with the vagus nerve. They said she'd be here. The interviewer scans the room. There, at a small table near the window, sits Vicky. Calm, composed. A cup of tea in front of her. Not flashy, not dramatic, just present. The interviewer approaches. The interviewer asks, Vicky, are you the vagus nerve? Vicky looks up, steady and grounded. Vicky smiles and replies, please, have a seat. The interviewer sits, notebook ready. The interviewer asks, thank you for meeting with me. I'd like to start by asking, what would you like people to understand about you? Vicky nods once, then begins. Hello everyone. My name is Vicky. I'm the vagus nerve. Before we begin, I want to ask you for something simple. An open mind, a little compassion, a little sympathy for what I'm about to say. Because some of the things you see people do, you judge too quickly. You call them irresponsible. You call them weak. You call them foolish. You call them names that do not belong to them. Let me bring something to your attention. I am the one you should be blaming, not them. Do not cast judgment on people who stayed in situations that were harmful. Do not look from the outside and say the same tired sentence I hear every day. Why didn't they just leave? Why didn't he leave? Why didn't she leave? Why didn't they leave? I would have left. Let me tell you something. If you want to blame anyone, blame me. If you want to criticize anyone, criticize me. And I mean that literally. They had no control over the reasoning you think they should have had. Their nervous system was not in a place where logic could lead them out. Their body was not in a state where leaving felt possible or safe. Some people stay because of me. Some people stay because their system is frozen. Some people stay because their system is shut down. Some people stay because their system is trying to keep them alive. And for the ones whose reasons are outside of me, think about this. Think about finances. Think about culture. Think about religion. Think about what they were conditioned to tolerate. Think about trauma. Think about the nervous system they were born with or shaped by. Think about whether they were in a conform response or a flight response. Think about what survival looked like for them. Now let's talk. Now let me explain something that most people never learn. There is more than fight. There is more than flight. There are other survival states that take over when danger feels too big, too close, or too overwhelming. And I am the one who controls them. Let's start with freeze. Freeze is when the body says, do not move, do not speak, do not draw attention, stay small, stay still, stay alive. It is not a choice. It is not weakness. It is a survival strategy older than language. Then there is fawn. Fawn is when the body says, agree, comply, keep the peace, make them calm so you can stay safe. People call it people-pleasing. I call it staying alive in the only way the nervous system knows how. Now let's talk about shutdown. Shutdown is when everything goes dim. The mind goes quiet. The body goes numb. The world feels far away. This is not giving up. This is the system protecting itself from overload. And finally, survival mode. Survival mode is when the body is not living. It is enduring. It is calculating danger. It is scanning the room. It is choosing the safest option, not the smartest one. And sometimes the safest option is staying exactly where you are. You think they stayed because they wanted to. You think they stayed because they didn't know better. You think they stayed because they were weak. No, they stayed because their nervous system was trying to keep them alive. They stayed because I was doing everything in my power to protect them. They stayed because leaving felt like a bigger threat than staying. So before you judge someone for not leaving, understand this. You were judging a person whose body was in a state you have never felt. You were judging a decision that was not made by their mind. It was made by me. Now that you know that, let's keep going. The interviewer asks about the basics. The interviewer flips to a fresh page in their notebook. They look at Vicky with genuine curiosity. The interviewer asks, Vicky, before we go any deeper, can I ask something simple? For people who have never heard of you before, where are you in the body, what do you look like, and what exactly do you do? Vicky nods once, then answers. All right, let's start simple. No science class, no charts, just the basics. Where am I located? I run from your brain, down your neck, through your chest, all the way into your stomach. Imagine a long headphone cord that connects your brain to your body. That's me. What do I look like? Honestly, I look like a long piece of cooked spaghetti. Not cute, not glamorous, just a long noodle running through your whole body. What do? I'm the body's calm down button. I'm the one who decides when you can relax, digest your food, breathe normally, and stop acting like you're being chased. Who controls me? Your experiences, your environment, your memories, your trauma, your relationships, your childhood, your sense of safety. Your brain doesn't boss me around. Your logic doesn't boss me around. Your friends don't boss me around. Your body does. And your body learned what safe feels like long before you learned how to spell your name. Now that we've got the basics, let's rewrite the whole safety and trauma rewiring section in a way that actually feels human. The interviewer listens carefully as Vicky finishes explaining the basics. They take a quiet breath, then lean forward with the next question. The interviewer asks, Vicky, can you help people understand something that confuses so many of us? How does the body decide what safety feels like? Because from the outside, it often looks like people are choosing things that don't make sense. What is actually happening inside the body when someone feels safe or unsafe? Vicky nods, then begins. Let me break this down the way your grandma would explain it. Safety is not a thought. Safety is not a decision. Safety is not a conversation you have with yourself. Safety is a feeling, like when you walk into a house and instantly know if you can take your shoes off or if you need to keep them on and stay alert. Your body learns safety the same way you learn which potato chips you like. By experience, by repetition, by what you grew up with. If you grew up in a loud house, loud might feel normal. If you grew up around yelling, yelling might feel familiar. If you grew up around chaos, chaos might feel like home. Not because it's good, but because it's what your body knows. Your body will always choose what feels familiar over what feels logical. Because familiar feels survivable, and survivable feels safe. Think of me like a smoke detector with trust issues. If you've lived through enough fires, I'm going to beep even when someone is just making toast. That's how I work. I scan the world and ask one question. Have we lived through something like this before? If the answer is yes, even if it was painful, even if it was traumatic, your body might label it as safe enough to survive. Not good, not healthy, just known. That's why people stay in situations that look dangerous from the outside. Their body isn't choosing comfort. Their body is choosing familiarity. Their body is choosing the only version of safety it has ever known. And that choice is not made by their mind. It's made by me. Now let me explain trauma without sounding like a textbook. Trauma is like someone messing with your Wi-Fi settings. Suddenly everything is glitchy. Everything loads slow. Everything buffers. And you don't know why. Trauma doesn't just hurt your feelings. It changes your settings. Here's what trauma does to me. Trauma makes me jumpy. Like a cat that's been stepped on too many times. Trauma makes me overprotective. Like an auntie who keeps checking the window even though nobody's outside. Trauma makes me send danger signals even when the room is quiet. Like a car alarm that goes off when the wind blows. Trauma makes me tighten your body like a pair of shoes that are one size too small. You can walk, but you're uncomfortable the whole time. And after a while, your body starts thinking this is normal. Trauma teaches your system to expect danger. Trauma teaches your system to stay ready. Trauma teaches your system that calm is suspicious. Trauma teaches your system that peace is unfamiliar. This is not weakness. This is adaptation. If you grew up in chaos, your system adapts to chaos. If you grew up in fear, your system adapts to fear. If you grew up in instability, your system adapts to instability. Your body will always return to what it adapted to. Not because it's good, but because it's familiar. Trauma can make danger feel normal. Trauma can make calm feel weird. Trauma can make leaving feel unsafe. Trauma can make staying feel like the only option. So when you see someone freeze, fawn, shut down, or stay, understand this. You're not watching a weak person. You're watching a nervous system that has been rewired by life. You're watching survival in real time. And that survival is not controlled by their thoughts. It's controlled by me. The interviewer listens closely as Vicky finishes explaining how the body learns safety. They pause, thinking, then ask the next question with genuine curiosity. The interviewer asks, Vicky, now that we understand how the body learns safety, can you explain something else people struggle with? When someone has been overwhelmed or stressed for a long time, how does the body actually calm down? Not the scientific explanation, but what it feels like in real life. What does returning to calm actually look like inside the body? Vicky nods, then begins. All right, now that you know who I am and where I live, let's talk about how your body actually calms down. Not the science fair version. The real-life version. Because calming down is not some mystical yoga retreat moment. It's more like your body slowly getting its life together after acting dramatic all day. Let me break it down. Your body calms down the same way a car cools off after overheating. You ever seen a car that's been driven too hard? Hood smoking, engine hissing, everybody standing around like, don't touch it yet, let it cool. That's you. When you've been stressed, scared, overwhelmed, or dealing with nonsense, your whole system is overheated. You can't think. You can't breathe right. You can't make decisions. You have to sit there and cool off. And I'm the one who pops the hood and lets the steam out. Calm comes back the same way soup cools down. Slow, quiet, annoyingly patient. You can't rush it. You can't blow on it. You can't microwave it. You just have to let the heat settle. That's your nervous system. It doesn't snap back. It settles back. Calm returns the same way your grandma's house smells like food before you even see the kitchen. It sneaks in. It shows up before you notice it. It starts small. A breath that doesn't feel tight. A shoulder that drops half an inch. A heartbeat that stops acting like it's running late. You don't even realize it's happening until you suddenly think, wait, why do I feel a little better? That's me. That's Vicky. Sliding calm back into your system like a grandma sliding biscuits into the oven. Calm comes back like Wi-Fi reconnecting after glitching all day. At first, nothing. Then 1 bar. Then 2. Then suddenly everything loads again. Your thoughts get clearer. Your body stops bracing. Your breath stops hiding. You're not fully back online, but the signal is returning. That's me resetting the router. Calm returns the same way your body relaxes when you finally take off tight shoes. You know that moment. You've been walking around all day. Feet screaming. Shoes judging you. Then you take them off and your whole body says, thank you. That's what returning to calm feels like. Not perfect. Just less trapped. Calm comes back like leftovers warming up. Not instantly. Not evenly. But eventually everything gets warm again. Your breath warms up. Your thoughts warm up. Your sense of safety warms up. Piece by piece, bit by bit, signal by signal. That's how the body returns to calm. Not with a dramatic moment. With a slow reheating of the system. And I'm the microwave. I'm the charger. I'm the Wi-Fi. I'm the engine cooling down. I'm the one bringing you back. The interviewer listens closely as Vicky finishes explaining how the body learns safety. They pause, thinking, then ask the next question with genuine curiosity. The interviewer asks, Vicky, now that we understand how the body learns safety, can you explain something else people struggle with? When someone has been overwhelmed or stressed for a long time, how does the body actually calm down? Not the scientific explanation, but what it feels like in real life. What does returning to calm actually look like inside the body? Vicky nods, then begins. All right, now that you know who I am and where I live, let's talk about how your body actually calms down. Not the science fair version. The real-life version. Because calming down is not some mystical yoga retreat moment. It's more like your body slowly getting its life together after acting dramatic all day. Let me break it down. Your body calms down the same way a car cools off after overheating. You ever seen a car that's been driven too hard? Hood smoking, engine hissing, everybody standing around like, don't touch it yet, let it cool. That's you. When you've been stressed, scared, overwhelmed, or dealing with nonsense, your whole system is overheated. You can't think. You can't breathe right. You can't make decisions. You have to sit there and cool off. And I'm the one who pops the hood and lets the steam out. Calm comes back the same way soup cools down. Slow, quiet, annoyingly patient. You can't rush it. You can't blow on it. You can't microwave it. You just have to let the heat settle. That's your nervous system. It doesn't snap back. It settles back. Calm returns the same way your grandma's house smells like food before you even see the kitchen. It sneaks in. It shows up before you notice it. It starts small. A breath that doesn't feel tight. A shoulder that drops half an inch. A heartbeat that stops acting like it's running late. You don't even realize it's happening until you suddenly think, wait, why do I feel a little better? That's me. That's Vicky. Sliding calm back into your system like a grandma sliding biscuits into the oven. Calm comes back like Wi-Fi reconnecting after glitching all day. At first, nothing. Then 1 bar. Then 2. Then suddenly everything loads again. Your thoughts get clearer. Your body stops bracing. Your breath stops hiding. You're not fully back online, but the signal is returning. That's me resetting the router. Calm returns the same way your body relaxes when you finally take off tight shoes. You know that moment. You've been walking around all day. Feet screaming, shoes judging you. Then you take them off and your whole body says, thank you. That's what returning to calm feels like. Not perfect. Just less trapped. Calm comes back like leftovers warming up. Not instantly, not evenly, but eventually everything gets warm again. Your breath warms up. Your thoughts warm up. Your sense of safety warms up. Piece by piece, bit by bit, signal by signal. That's how the body returns to calm. Not with a dramatic moment. With a slow reheating of the system. And I'm the microwave. I'm the charger. I'm the Wi-Fi. I'm the engine cooling down. I'm the one bringing you back. The café has grown quieter. The interviewer sits across from Vicky, pen resting on the notebook, expression thoughtful. They take a breath and ask the next question with care. The interviewer asks, Vicky, there's something families and outsiders struggle to understand. When someone finally escapes a dangerous situation and the person who harmed them is gone, people expect relief, anger, or distance. But instead, survivors often still feel attached, forgiving, confused, or emotionally connected. What happens in the months after someone escapes danger? What is going on inside their body during that time? Vicky folds her hands gently around her cup and begins. All right, now that you know who I am and where I live, let's talk about how your body actually calms down. Not the science fair version. The real-life version. Because calming down is not some mystical yoga retreat moment. It's more like your body slowly getting its life together after acting dramatic all day. Let me break it down. Your body calms down the same way a car cools off after overheating. You ever seen a car that's been driven too hard? Hood smoking, engine hissing, everybody standing around like, don't touch it yet, let it cool. That's you. When you've been stressed, scared, overwhelmed, or dealing with nonsense, your whole system is overheated. You can't think. You can't breathe right. You can't make decisions. You have to sit there and cool off. And I'm the one who pops the hood and lets the steam out. Calm comes back the same way soup cools down. Slow, quiet, annoyingly patient. You can't rush it. You can't blow on it. You can't microwave it. You just have to let the heat settle. That's your nervous system. It doesn't snap back. It settles back. Calm returns the same way your grandma's house smells like food before you even see the kitchen. It sneaks in. It shows up before you notice it. It starts small. A breath that doesn't feel tight. A shoulder that drops half an inch. A heartbeat that stops acting like it's running late. You don't even realize it's happening until you suddenly think, wait, why do I feel a little better? That's me. That's Vicky. Sliding calm back into your system like a grandma sliding biscuits into the oven. Calm comes back like Wi-Fi reconnecting after glitching all day. At first, nothing. Then 1 bar. Then 2. Then suddenly everything loads again. Your thoughts get clearer. Your body stops bracing. Your breath stops hiding. You're not fully back online, but the signal is returning. That's me resetting the router. Calm returns the same way your body relaxes when you finally take off tight shoes. You know that moment. You've been walking around all day. Feet screaming, shoes judging you. Then you take them off and your whole body says, thank you. That's what returning to calm feels like. Not perfect. Just less trapped. Calm comes back like leftovers warming up. Not instantly, not evenly, but eventually everything gets warm again. Your breath warms up. Your thoughts warm up. Your sense of safety warms up. Piece by piece, bit by bit, signal by signal. That's how the body returns to calm. Not with a dramatic moment. With a slow reheating of the system. And I'm the microwave. I'm the charger. I'm the Wi-Fi. I'm the engine cooling down. I'm the one bringing you back. The interviewer adjusts their notebook, takes a quiet breath, and looks across the table at Vicky with genuine curiosity. The interviewer asks, Vicky, for people who want to understand you better, what kinds of things damage you or wear you down over time? Vicky nods once, then answers with clarity. Let me explain this in a way that makes sense. I am built to help you feel safe. I am built to bring your body back to calm. I am built to regulate your breath, your heart, your digestion, and your sense of steadiness. But there are things that wear me down. Things that make my job harder. Things that push me into overdrive until I cannot reset the way I should. Here is what damages me. Constant stress. Living in fear. Growing up in chaos. Being yelled at, being ignored, being controlled, being isolated, being shamed, being rushed, being overworked, being undersupported, being in environments where you never feel safe. Every time life hits you with something overwhelming, I take the impact. I tighten, I brace, I become alert even when nothing is happening. I start sending danger signals because I am trying to protect you. People think trauma lives in the mind. But it lives in me. I carry it. I respond to it. I adapt to it. That is what damages me. The interviewer turns the page in their notebook and asks the next question. The interviewer asks, Vicky, if those things damage you, then what keeps you healthy? What helps you function the way you are supposed to? Vicky takes a slow breath before answering. This part is simple. I heal in environments where the body feels safe. Not perfect. Not peaceful every moment. Just safe enough to breathe without bracing. Here is what keeps me healthy. Consistency. Predictability. Warmth. Gentle voices. Supportive relationships. Moments where you do not have to look over your shoulder. Spaces where you can rest without fear. People who treat you with steadiness instead of volatility. Warm food helps me. Warm environments help me. Breathing that is not rushed helps me. Touch that is safe helps me. Laughter helps me. Connection helps me. Being around people who do not activate danger signals helps me. Every time you feel safe, I repair. Every time you rest, I reset. Every time you are treated with kindness, I strengthen. Every time you experience calm, I learn that calm is possible. I do not need perfection. I do not need a flawless life. I just need moments where your body can say, "We are all right." That is what keeps me healthy. The café is calm. The interviewer turns a fresh page in their notebook and looks at Vicky with focused curiosity. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, what happens when you become overactive? What does that look like inside the body?" Vicky nods once and begins. "When I become overactive, the body does not feel calm. It feels shut down. People think I only bring peace, but that is not always true. If I activate too strongly, I can pull the entire system downward. I can slow the heart too much. I can drop blood pressure too quickly. I can make the body feel faint, dizzy, or disconnected. Emotionally, an overactive response can feel like numbness. Like the world is far away. Like the body is moving through fog. Like the mind is quiet in a way that does not feel peaceful, but empty. This is not weakness. This is not giving up. This is the system protecting itself from overload. When danger or stress becomes too much, I may shut things down to prevent collapse. People call it dissociation. People call it going blank. People call it feeling nothing. But what is really happening is that I am trying to keep the body from being overwhelmed. I am reducing sensation so the system can survive the moment. That is what happens when I become overactive. The interviewer takes a slow breath, absorbing the explanation. They look up again with another question. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, what would happen if you were not in the body at all? What would the body be like without you?" Vicky folds her hands gently and answers, "If I were not in the body, the entire system would lose its balance. Your heart would run too fast. Your breath would stay shallow. Your digestion would shut down. Your body would live in a constant state of alarm. There would be no signal telling the system to slow down. No signal telling the body to rest. No signal telling the organs to work together. No signal telling the mind that it is safe. Without me, the body would stay in fight or flight with no way out. The heart would race without relief. The breath would tighten without release. The stomach would clench without softening. The mind would scan for danger without pause. I am the bridge between the brain and the body. I am the regulator. I am the one who brings everything back to center. Without me, there would be no calm. No recovery. No reset. No return to safety. I am not optional. I am essential. That is what would happen if I were not in the body." The interviewer closes their notebook for a moment, thinking carefully. They look at Vicky with genuine curiosity and ask the next set of questions. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, what foods and lifestyles keep you healthy? And what foods and lifestyles are harmful to you?" Vicky takes a slow breath, then answers with clarity and steadiness. "Let me explain this in a way that is simple and practical. I am part of the nervous system, but I respond to the same things the rest of the body responds to. I am influenced by what you eat, how you live, how you rest, and how you move through the world. Let's start with what keeps me healthy. I function best when the body feels supported. Warm meals help me. Foods that are gentle on the stomach help me. Meals that are not rushed help me. Hydration helps me. Regular eating patterns help me. Anything that keeps the digestive system steady makes my job easier. I also respond well to lifestyles that create predictability. Consistent sleep. Regular routines. Moments of quiet. Time away from constant noise. Breathing that is not forced or hurried. Movement that is steady and not extreme. Relationships that feel safe and respectful. These things strengthen me. They help me regulate the heart. They help me regulate the breath. They help me bring the body back to calm. Now let me explain what harms me. Irregular eating patterns make my work harder. Long periods without food. Meals eaten in a rush. Foods that cause discomfort or inflammation. Anything that disrupts the digestive system puts strain on me. Lifestyles filled with constant stress wear me down. Lack of sleep. Unpredictable environments. High conflict. Loudness that never stops. Rushing from one thing to the next without pause. Living in a state where the body never feels safe enough to rest. These things push me into overdrive. They make me tighten. They make me brace. They make me send danger signals even when nothing is happening. I am not fragile, but I am responsive. I react to the world you live in. I react to the food you eat. I react to the pace you keep. I react to the people around you. I react to the environments you move through. When your life supports calm, I strengthen. When your life is filled with chaos, I struggle. That is how foods and lifestyles help me. And that is how foods and lifestyles harm me. Here is the full cafe scene, written cleanly, professionally, and in the exact structure you've been using. No slang. No stereotypes. No semicolons. Just the interviewer asking the two questions, and Vicky answering in one continuous, grounded monologue. You can paste this directly into your script. The cafe is quiet again. The interviewer sits forward, pen ready, and asks the next set of questions with care. The interviewer asks, Vicky, what happens to attachment and trauma bonding over time? How does it change as the body begins to feel safe again? Vicky nods gently and begins. Attachment that forms in danger is not the same as attachment that forms in safety. It is built on survival. It is built on familiarity. It is built on the nervous system trying to reduce harm in the only way it knows how. When someone escapes a harmful situation, the danger may be gone, but the wiring remains. The body still remembers what kept it alive. The body still remembers what felt predictable. The body still remembers what felt familiar. In the beginning, the attachment may stay strong. The person may feel protective. They may feel guilty. They may feel confused. They may feel drawn toward the person who harmed them, even though they do not want to return. This is not loyalty. This is not love. This is not weakness. This is the nervous system trying to make sense of a world that suddenly changed. Over time, as the body experiences safety, the attachment begins to loosen. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Slowly. Quietly. In small shifts. A thought becomes clearer. A memory becomes sharper. A feeling becomes more honest. A sense of self begins to return. The nervous system starts to understand that the danger is gone. It starts to understand that safety is possible. It starts to understand that the familiar pattern is no longer needed. The attachment fades as the body learns a new version of safety. The bond weakens as the system rewires itself. The confusion lifts as the body recalibrates. This is not quick. This is not simple. This is not linear. But it happens. Because the nervous system is always learning, always adapting, always updating its understanding of what it means to survive. That is what happens to attachment and trauma bonding over time. The interviewer takes a moment, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how do you respond to long-term trauma? What happens to you when someone has lived in fear or instability for years? Vicky folds her hands and answers with steady clarity. Long-term trauma changes the way I function. It does not just affect the mind. It affects me directly. When someone lives in fear for a long time, I adapt to that fear. When someone grows up in chaos, I adapt to that chaos. When someone survives instability, I adapt to that instability. I become quicker to react. I become slower to calm. I become more alert, even when nothing is happening. I become more protective, even when the danger is gone. Long-term trauma teaches me to expect threat. It teaches me to scan the environment constantly. It teaches me to prepare for impact before anything occurs. It teaches me that calm is unfamiliar and peace is suspicious. This is not a flaw. This is adaptation. This is survival. This is the body doing what it had to do to endure what it lived through. But adaptation has a cost. I may stay activated long after the danger ends. I may send signals that do not match the present moment. I may tighten the body when nothing is wrong. I may shorten the breath when the room is safe. I may keep the system on alert because that is what kept it alive. Long-term trauma does not break me. It reshapes me. It rewires me. It teaches me patterns that I continue to follow until the body learns something new. And with time, safety, consistency, and support, I can learn again. I can recalibrate. I can soften. I can return to balance. But it takes patience. It takes stability. It takes environments that do not repeat the harm. That is how I respond to long-term trauma. The café is calm. The interviewer sits forward, ready for the next part of the conversation. They look at Vicky with steady focus. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, how do you protect someone during danger? What do you do in the moment when a person is facing something overwhelming?" Vicky nods once and begins. "When danger appears, I do not wait for the mind to think. I act before thought. I act before logic. I act before language. My job is to keep you alive, and I do that by shifting the entire body into the state that gives you the best chance of survival. Sometimes I freeze the system. I make the body still. I make the breath quiet. I make the muscles lock. I make the person appear small and unnoticed. This is not fear. This is protection. Sometimes I move the system into fawn. I soften the voice. I make the person agreeable. I make them read the room with precision. I make them do whatever reduces the threat in front of them. This is not people-pleasing. This is survival. Sometimes I shut the system down. I dim sensation. I quiet the mind. I create distance inside the body so the person does not feel the full impact of what is happening. This is not giving up. This is shielding. And sometimes I hold the system in survival mode. I keep the heart ready. I keep the breath shallow. I keep the senses alert. I keep the body calculating the safest option, even if that option does not look logical from the outside. I do not choose based on preference. I choose based on survival. I choose the state that gives the body the highest chance of making it through the moment. That is how I protect someone during danger. The interviewer takes a quiet breath, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, how do you decide when it is finally safe? What tells you that the danger has passed?" Vicky folds her hands gently and answers, "Safety is not a thought. Safety is not a decision. Safety is not a sentence the mind says to itself. Safety is a pattern. Safety is repetition. Safety is consistency. Safety is the absence of threat over time. I do not calm the body because someone says everything is fine. I calm the body when the environment proves it. I watch for tone. I watch for movement. I watch for predictability. I watch for the absence of danger signals. I watch for the presence of steady support. I need to see that the threat is not returning. I need to see that the body is not bracing. I need to see that the world around you is not repeating the patterns that caused harm. Only then do I begin to unwind the survival responses. Not all at once. Not quickly, slowly, carefully, in small steps. A breath becomes deeper. A heartbeat becomes steadier. A thought becomes clearer. A sense of self begins to return. I decide it is safe when the body has experienced enough moments of calm that the pattern becomes familiar. I decide it is safe when the environment shows consistency instead of chaos. I decide it is safe when the system no longer needs to protect itself. Safety is not declared. Safety is learned. That is how I decide when it is finally safe. Blank. The cafe is quiet. The interviewer sits with their notebook open, listening closely to everything Vicky has explained so far. They take a moment, then ask the next set of questions with care. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how do you help someone reconnect with themselves after everything they have been through? And how does the system recover after long-term survival mode? Vicky nods gently and begins. When someone has lived in danger or instability for a long time, they often lose connection with themselves. Not because they are broken. Not because they are weak. But because survival required them to disconnect from anything that felt vulnerable. My job in healing is to guide the person back to themselves slowly and safely. I do this by reintroducing sensations that were once overwhelming. A deeper breath. A steadier heartbeat. A moment of quiet that does not feel threatening. A feeling in the chest that is not fear but presence. I help the person notice their own emotions again. Not all at once. Not in a flood. In small, manageable pieces. I help them recognize their own needs. I help them feel their own boundaries. I help them sense when something feels right or wrong. I help them hear their own internal signals that were muted during survival. Reconnection is not dramatic. It is subtle. It is gradual. It is the body remembering who it was before it had to protect itself every second of the day. I help the person return to themselves by creating a foundation of safety inside the body. Once safety is present, identity can return. Once safety is present, emotions can return. Once safety is present, the person can feel like a whole human again. That is how I help someone reconnect with themselves. Recovery from long-term survival mode is not quick. It is not linear. It is not a single moment of clarity. It is a process of unwinding patterns that were built to keep the person alive. When someone has lived in survival mode for years, the body learns to expect danger. The breath stays tight. The muscles stay tense. The heart stays alert. The mind stays watchful. I do not undo this overnight. I undo it through repetition of safety. I begin by softening the breath. I slow the heart when the environment proves it is safe. I reduce the constant scanning when the world shows consistency. I release tension when the body experiences moments without threat. Recovery happens in layers. First, the body learns that it can rest for a moment. Then it learns it can rest for longer. Then it learns it can rest without fear. Then it learns that rest is not a trap but a possibility. The system begins to trust calm again. The system begins to trust stillness again. The system begins to trust connection again. The system begins to trust itself again. Long-term survival mode rewires the nervous system. Recovery rewires it back, not to the past version of the person, but to a stronger, more aware, more grounded version who understands safety in a new way. I guide that process. I pace it. I protect it. I support it. That is how the system recovers after long-term survival mode. The cafe is steady and quiet. The interviewer turns a fresh page in their notebook and looks at Vicky with focused attention. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how do you respond to triggers? What happens inside the body when something reminds a person of past danger? Vicky nods once and begins. A trigger is not a choice. A trigger is not an overreaction. A trigger is not someone being dramatic. A trigger is the nervous system recognizing a pattern that feels similar to something that once caused harm. When a trigger appears, I react before the mind understands what is happening. I compare the present moment to past experiences. I scan for similarities. I look for familiar tones, movements, expressions, or environments. If something feels close to a past danger, I activate the same survival response that kept the person alive before. I may tighten the chest. I may shorten the breath. I may speed the heart. I may freeze the body. I may shut things down. I may pull the person into alertness even when nothing is happening. This is not the person choosing fear. This is me choosing protection. Triggers are not about the present. They are about the past showing up in the present. They are about the body remembering what the mind has tried to move on from. I respond to triggers because I am trying to prevent harm. I respond because I learned patterns during danger. I respond because survival taught me to act quickly. And with time, safety, and repetition, I can learn new patterns. I can learn that the present moment is different. I can learn that the person is no longer in danger. I can learn to respond with calm instead of alarm. But until that learning happens, I react to triggers the way I was trained to react during danger. That is how I respond to triggers. The interviewer takes a slow breath, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how does the system handle memories during recovery? What happens to the memories of what someone lived through as they begin to heal? Vicky folds her hands gently and answers. Memories during recovery do not behave in a straight line. They do not appear in order. They do not arrive on a schedule. They do not stay quiet just because the danger is gone. When someone begins to heal, the body finally has enough safety to process what it could not process before. This means memories may surface, not to harm the person, but because the system is strong enough to face them. Sometimes memories return in fragments. A sound, a smell, a moment, a feeling in the chest, a flash of something that does not have words yet. Sometimes memories return with emotion first. Sadness without a story, fear without a picture, anger without a clear reason. The body remembers before the mind does. Sometimes memories stay quiet for a long time. Not because they are gone, but because the system is still rebuilding the capacity to hold them. Recovery is not about forcing memories to appear. Recovery is about creating enough safety for the body to decide when it is ready. As safety grows, the system begins to organize the past. It begins to separate then from now. It begins to understand that the danger is over. It begins to allow the mind to make sense of what happened. Memories do not return to punish the person. They return because the system is healing. They return because the body is no longer in survival mode. They return because the person finally has the internal resources to process what once overwhelmed them. I guide that process. I pace it. I protect it. I make sure the system does not take on more than it can handle at once. That is how the system handles memories during recovery. The café is steady and calm. The interviewer turns another page in their notebook and looks at Vicky with focused attention. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how do you support emotional regulation? What role do you play when someone is trying to manage their emotions? Vicky nods gently and begins. Emotional regulation is not just a mental skill. It is a physical process. It is the body and the mind working together to create balance. I support emotional regulation by controlling the signals that move between the brain and the body. When emotions rise, I help slow the heart. I help deepen the breath. I help soften the muscles. I help reduce the intensity of the moment so the person can think clearly. When someone feels overwhelmed, I help bring the system back toward center. I help shift the body out of alarm. I help reduce the physical sensations that make emotions feel bigger than they are. I also help the person notice their emotions without being consumed by them. A steady breath, a calmer heartbeat, a grounded feeling in the chest. These are signals I send to help the person stay present. Emotional regulation is not about shutting feelings down. It is about creating enough internal stability to understand them. I help create that stability. I support emotional regulation by giving the body the conditions it needs to feel safe enough to process emotions instead of reacting to them. That is how I support emotional regulation. The interviewer takes a moment, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how does the system handle triggers that appear years later? What happens when something small suddenly brings back a reaction long after the danger is gone? Vicky folds her hands gently and answers. Triggers can appear long after the danger has ended because the nervous system remembers patterns more deeply than the mind remembers stories. When a trigger appears years later, I react the same way I reacted during the original danger. Not because the person is unsafe, but because the pattern feels familiar. A tone of voice, a sudden movement, a certain expression, a smell, a place, a situation that resembles something from the past. These small cues can activate the same survival response that once kept the person alive. I may tighten the chest. I may shorten the breath. I may speed the heart. I may freeze the body. I may pull the person into alertness even when nothing is happening. This does not mean the person has not healed. It means the nervous system is still learning. It means the body is still updating its understanding of safety. It means the system is still comparing the present to the past. Over time, with repeated experiences of safety, I learn to respond differently. I learn that the present moment is not the same as the past. I learn that the person is no longer in danger. I learn that the familiar pattern no longer requires a survival response. Triggers appearing years later are not signs of failure. They are signs that the system is still protecting the person. They are signs that the body remembers deeply. They are signs that healing is ongoing. And with continued safety, consistency, and support, I can learn to stay calm even when old patterns appear. That is how I handle triggers that show up years later. The café is steady and calm. The interviewer turns another page in their notebook and looks at Vicky with focused attention. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how do you support emotional regulation? What role do you play when someone is trying to manage their emotions? Vicky nods gently and begins. Emotional regulation is not just a mental skill. It is a physical process. It is the body and the mind working together to create balance. I support emotional regulation by controlling the signals that move between the brain and the body. When emotions rise, I help slow the heart. I help deepen the breath. I help soften the muscles. I help reduce the intensity of the moment so the person can think clearly. When someone feels overwhelmed, I help bring the system back toward center. I help shift the body out of alarm. I help reduce the physical sensations that make emotions feel bigger than they are. I also help the person notice their emotions without being consumed by them. A steady breath, a calmer heartbeat, a grounded feeling in the chest. These are signals I send to help the person stay present. Emotional regulation is not about shutting feelings down. It is about creating enough internal stability to understand them. I help create that stability. I support emotional regulation by giving the body the conditions it needs to feel safe enough to process emotions instead of reacting to them. That is how I support emotional regulation. The interviewer takes a moment, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how does the system handle triggers that appear years later? What happens when something small suddenly brings back a reaction long after the danger is gone? Vicky folds her hands gently and answers. Triggers can appear long after the danger has ended because the nervous system remembers patterns more deeply than the mind remembers stories. When a trigger appears years later, I react the same way I reacted during the original danger. Not because the person is unsafe, but because the pattern feels familiar. A tone of voice, a sudden movement, a certain expression, a smell, a place, a situation that resembles something from the past. These small cues can activate the same survival response that once kept the person alive. I may tighten the chest. I may shorten the breath. I may speed the heart. I may freeze the body. I may pull the person into alertness even when nothing is happening. This does not mean the person has not healed. It means the nervous system is still learning. It means the body is still updating its understanding of safety. It means the system is still comparing the present to the past. Over time, with repeated experiences of safety, I learn to respond differently. I learn that the present moment is not the same as the past. I learn that the person is no longer in danger. I learn that the familiar pattern no longer requires a survival response. Triggers appearing years later are not signs of failure. They are signs that the system is still protecting the person. They are signs that the body remembers deeply. They are signs that healing is ongoing. And with continued safety, consistency, and support, I can learn to stay calm even when old patterns appear. That is how I handle triggers that show up years later. Let me start with the first question, because it is one people misunderstand often. When the body is under stress, I do not try to make you gain weight. I try to keep you alive. Stress activates survival mode. Survival mode changes how the body uses energy. It changes how the body stores energy. It changes how the body protects itself. When danger feels constant, the body prepares for scarcity. It prepares for unpredictability. It prepares for the possibility that you may need extra fuel to survive. This is not about appearance. This is not about willpower. This is not about discipline. This is biology. During stress, the body may hold on to calories. It may slow digestion. It may increase cravings for quick energy. It may store fat more easily because fat is long-term fuel. It may change hormones that influence appetite and metabolism. I do not do this to punish you. I do this because the body believes it is protecting you. Weight gain during stress is not a failure. It is a survival response. Now let me answer the second question. I am not responsible for dissociative alters. That is not my role. That is not my function. That is not something I create. Dissociation is a protective response that involves the entire nervous system and the brain working together to shield a person from overwhelming experiences. It is a way the mind and body survive trauma that is too intense to process in the moment. My role in dissociation is different. I help regulate the body during overwhelming moments. I may shut things down. I may dim sensation. I may quiet the system. I may create distance inside the body so the person does not feel the full impact of what is happening. But I do not create alters. I do not divide identity. I do not form separate parts. That is a complex psychological adaptation that develops when trauma is repeated, severe, or occurs during early development. It is the mind protecting itself in the only way it can. It is the system creating compartments to survive what was impossible to face as one whole self. My role is to protect the body. The mind protects itself in its own ways. Dissociation is not weakness. It is not brokenness. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is survival. And while I am part of the survival response, I am not the architect of dissociative identity. I am the guardian of the body. The mind creates its own guardians when it needs them. That is the truth about weight gain during stress. And that is the truth about dissociation and alters. The café is calm. The interviewer turns a fresh page in their notebook and looks at Vicky with steady curiosity. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, how do you help someone feel grounded? What do you do inside the body that brings a person back into themselves?" Vicky nods gently and begins. Feeling grounded is not a mindset. It is a physical state. It is the body settling enough for the mind to return to the present moment. I help someone feel grounded by slowing the internal signals that create panic. I steady the heartbeat. I deepen the breath. I soften the muscles that have been bracing for too long. I reduce the noise inside the chest so the person can hear themselves again. Grounding happens when the body stops preparing for danger. When the breath becomes fuller. When the shoulders drop. When the stomach unclenches. When the mind stops scanning the room. I guide the person back into their body by creating sensations that feel safe. Warmth in the chest. A breath that does not feel trapped. A heartbeat that is not racing. A sense of weight in the feet that reminds the person they are here, not back in the past. Grounding is not dramatic. It is subtle. It is the body saying, "We are not floating. We are not running. We are not hiding. We are here." That is how I help someone feel grounded. The interviewer takes a slow breath, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, how does the body respond when safety becomes consistent? What changes inside the system when safety is no longer temporary but steady?" Vicky folds her hands gently and answers, "When safety becomes consistent, the entire system begins to reorganize itself. At first, the body does not trust it. It waits for the pattern to break. It waits for the danger to return. It waits for the familiar chaos. But as safety repeats, I begin to update the system. The breath becomes deeper without being forced. The heart becomes steadier without effort. The muscles release tension they have held for years. The stomach begins to digest normally again. Sleep becomes less guarded. Thoughts become clearer. Emotions become easier to understand. Consistent safety teaches me that I do not have to stay in survival mode. It teaches me that I can soften. It teaches me that I can regulate without bracing. It teaches me that calm is not a trap but a possibility. Over time, the body stops reacting to old patterns. Triggers lose their intensity. Memories lose their sharpness. The past loses its grip. The system begins to trust the present. It begins to trust connection. It begins to trust rest. It begins to trust itself. Consistent safety rewires the nervous system. Not instantly, not perfectly, but steadily. That is how the body responds when safety becomes consistent. The café is steady and warm. The interviewer leans forward, sensing the depth of the next topic. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, how do you support identity rebuilding? What role do you play when someone is trying to rediscover who they are after trauma?" Vicky nods gently and begins. Is not just a story in the mind. Identity is a feeling in the body. It is the sense of who you are when you are not bracing for danger. When someone has lived through trauma, their identity often becomes shaped by survival. They learn to be who they needed to be to stay safe. They learn to silence parts of themselves. They learn to hide emotions. They learn to shrink or harden or disappear. My role in identity rebuilding is to create the internal conditions where the real self can return. I do this by calming the body enough for the person to feel again. I steady the breath so emotions are not overwhelming. I soften the muscles so the person does not feel like they must defend themselves. I quiet the survival alarms so the person can hear their own voice again. As safety grows, the person begins to notice their preferences, their boundaries, their values, their desires, their personality, their humor, their softness, their strength. These parts were never gone. They were waiting for the body to feel safe enough to let them come forward. Identity rebuilding is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to the person you were before survival took over. I support that return by giving the body the stability it needs to explore itself without fear. That is how I support identity rebuilding. The interviewer takes a slow breath, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, "When you said that the system rewires the nervous system, are you saying that if a person who came out of trauma has now been in a safe, predictable, steady, grounding, meditative, healthy circumstance for over a year, are you saying that new nerves will grow like new pathways?" Vicky folds her hands gently and answers. Yes. But let me explain it clearly. When I said the system rewires, I did not mean it in a poetic way. I meant it in a biological way. The nervous system is capable of change. It is capable of growth. It is capable of forming new pathways. It is capable of reorganizing itself based on experience. This process is called neuroplasticity. It means the brain and the nervous system can physically change their structure in response to new patterns. When someone lives in trauma, the pathways that support survival become strong. The pathways that support calm become weak. The pathways that support trust become quiet. The pathways that support connection become fragile. But when someone spends a long period in safety, something remarkable happens. The pathways for calm begin to strengthen. The pathways for trust begin to rebuild. The pathways for connection begin to grow. The pathways for presence begin to return. No, it is not like growing a brand new organ. But yes, it is like growing new roots inside the system. New wiring, new patterns, new responses. Safety teaches the nervous system to build new roads. Consistency teaches the nervous system to use those roads. Repetition teaches the nervous system to prefer those roads. Over time, the old survival pathways become less dominant. They do not disappear, but they stop controlling everything. The new pathways become stronger, clearer, and more automatic. So when you ask if new nerves grow like new pathways, the answer is this. The nervous system does not replace itself. But it absolutely rewires itself. It absolutely builds new connections. It absolutely strengthens new patterns. It absolutely changes in response to safety. A year of steady, predictable, grounding, healthy living is not just emotional progress. It is physical transformation. It is the nervous system learning a new way to exist. That is what I meant when I said the system rewires. The café is warm and steady. The interviewer turns a fresh page in their notebook and looks at Vicky with quiet seriousness. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how does the body rebuild trust in others? What happens inside the system when someone tries to trust again after being hurt? Vicky nods gently and begins. Trust is not a decision. Trust is not a promise. Trust is not a thought someone repeats to themselves. Trust is a physical experience. It is the body relaxing in the presence of another person. It is the breath softening. It is the heartbeat slowing. It is the muscles releasing their guard. When someone has been hurt, their body does not trust easily. Not because they are closed off. Not because they are dramatic. But because their nervous system learned that people can be dangerous. I rebuild trust slowly. I watch for consistency. I watch for tone. I watch for predictability. I watch for how someone treats you over time. When a person shows up gently, I soften the body a little. When they speak with steadiness, I loosen the chest. When they respect boundaries, I deepen the breath. When they are reliable, I reduce the internal alarms. Trust grows through repetition, not grand gestures, not perfect behavior, just steady presence. The body begins to learn. This person does not harm me. This person does not activate danger. This person does not repeat the past. And as that pattern continues, I allow the system to relax more. I allow connection to feel safer. I allow closeness to feel possible. Trust is not built in the mind. It is built in the body. And I am the one who rebuilds it piece by piece. That is how the body rebuilds trust in others. The interviewer takes a slow breath, then asks the next question. The interviewer asks, Vicky, how do you help someone reconnect with their body? What do you do when a survivor has been disconnected for a long time? Vicky folds her hands gently and answers. Disconnection from the body is not failure. It is protection. It is the system stepping away from sensations that were once too painful or too overwhelming to feel. My job in healing is to guide the person back into their body safely. I start with the smallest signals. A breath that feels a little deeper. A heartbeat that feels a little steadier. A moment of stillness that does not feel threatening. A sensation in the chest that is not fear but presence. I help the person notice their body without panic. I help them feel their emotions without shutting down. I help them sense their boundaries without confusion. I help them recognize their needs without guilt. Reconnection is not dramatic. It is subtle. It is gentle. It is the body saying, "You can come back now. It is safe to feel again." As safety becomes consistent, I strengthen the pathways that connect the mind and the body. I help the person feel grounded. I help them feel present. I help them feel real. I help them feel like themselves again. Reconnecting with the body is not about forcing sensation. It is about creating enough internal safety for the person to return to themselves without fear. That is how I help someone reconnect with their body. The café is quiet. The interviewer closes their notebook for a moment, then opens it again with a soft breath. They look at Vicky with a sense of completion. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, how does the body know it is finally healing? What are the signs inside the system that show recovery is happening?" Vicky nods gently and begins. Healing is not a single moment. It is a pattern. It is the body showing signs that it is no longer living in constant defense. The body knows it is healing when the alarms begin to quiet. When the breath becomes easier. When the heart does not race at every sound. When the muscles do not stay tense without reason. Healing shows up in small ways first. A deeper breath. A longer exhale. A moment of calm that does not feel suspicious. A thought that is clearer than before. A feeling that does not overwhelm the system. The body knows it is healing when rest becomes possible. When sleep is not a battle. When the stomach begins to digest normally again. When the shoulders stop living in a raised position. Healing also shows up in how the person responds to life. They pause before reacting. They feel emotions without shutting down. They notice their needs without guilt. They set boundaries without panic. They feel grounded instead of floating. The body knows it is healing when the past stops controlling every reaction. When triggers lose their intensity. When memories lose their sharpness. When the present moment feels more real than the past. Healing is not perfection. Healing is the return of choice. The return of presence. The return of self. That is how the body knows it is finally healing. The interviewer takes a slow breath, then asks the final question. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, how does the nervous system respond to love? What happens inside the body when someone experiences real, steady, healthy love?" Vicky folds her hands gently and answers, "Love is not just an emotion. It is a physiological experience. It is something the nervous system recognizes long before the mind puts words to it. When love is healthy, I respond by softening the entire system. I slow the heart in a steady way. I deepen the breath. I relax the muscles. I create a sense of warmth in the chest that signals safety. Love activates the pathways that support connection. It strengthens the circuits that allow the person to feel seen. It quiets the alarms that once kept the person distant. It teaches the body that closeness does not equal danger. Healthy love is predictable. It is consistent. It is gentle. It is steady. These qualities allow me to relax the system instead of preparing it for harm. When someone experiences real love, I help them feel grounded in the presence of another person. I help them stay present instead of dissociating. I help them feel their emotions without shutting down. I help them trust the moment without bracing for impact. Love also rewires the nervous system. It strengthens the pathways for calm. It reinforces the pathways for connection. It teaches the body that safety can come from another human being. Love does not heal everything instantly. But it creates the conditions where healing becomes possible. It gives the nervous system something it cannot create alone. It gives the system a steady pattern of safety to learn from. When love is real, the body responds with openness, with warmth, with presence, with trust. That is how the nervous system responds to love. The café is quiet. The interviewer leans forward, sensing the importance of this final question. They speak with genuine curiosity and respect. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, I have met people who use emotional support baby dolls. I was curious how you respond to these therapy baby dolls and if you recognize them. What do you do when the person is cuddling them or holding them? What do you do when the eyes send you the message of these lifelike little inanimate objects smiling? What do you do when the baby doll smells like baby powder?" Vicky takes a slow breath, then answers with clarity and compassion. "Let me explain this in a way that honors the truth of what the body experiences. I do not judge the object. I do not analyze whether it is alive or not. I do not question the logic behind it. I respond to signals. I respond to sensation. I respond to meaning. When a person holds a therapy baby doll, I respond to the weight in their arms. Weight signals caregiving. Weight signals nurturing. Weight signals safety. The body interprets that weight as something to protect, and I activate the pathways that support calm. When the person cuddles the doll, I respond to the posture. Arms wrapped. Chest softened. Breath slowed. This posture tells me the body is entering a caregiving state, and caregiving states activate calm, not alarm. When the eyes of the doll appear to smile, I respond to the visual cue. The brain knows the doll is not alive, but the nervous system responds to the expression. A soft face. A gentle gaze. A peaceful expression. These cues activate the same pathways that respond to warmth and connection. I do not require the object to be real. I respond to the signals the object creates. When the doll smells like baby powder, I respond to the scent. Scent is one of the strongest memory pathways in the nervous system. Baby powder is associated with innocence, safety, and caregiving. It activates memories of comfort. It activates associations of protection. It activates the parasympathetic system, which is my domain. I respond by softening the body. I slow the heart. I deepen the breath. I reduce the internal alarms. I create a sense of grounding. Therapy baby dolls work because they give the nervous system something it recognizes. Not logically, physically. The body responds to weight. The body responds to warmth. The body responds to scent. The body responds to facial cues. The body responds to the posture of holding something gently. I do not need the object to be alive. I only need the signals to be soothing. When a person holds a therapy baby doll, I treat it as a moment of caregiving. I treat it as a moment of connection. I treat it as a moment of safety. And I respond by calming the system. By grounding the person. By helping them feel present. By helping them feel nurtured. By helping them feel held, even if they are the one doing the holding. That is how I respond to therapy baby dolls. The café is warm and steady. The interviewer leans forward, sensing the tenderness of this final follow-up. The interviewer asks, "Vicky, I know some adults who have toys in their house and they sometimes play with them because it is them reparenting their inner child. Sometimes they even build a little shrine area for the toys that brought them joy when they were a child. My question is, what does the nervous system do during these reparenting interactions, whether they are playing with their little trucks or cars or baby dolls or teddy bears? And what does the nervous system do every time the adult walks by these toys or sees them in the room?" Vicky takes a slow breath, then answers with clarity and compassion. "Let me explain this in a way that honors the truth of what the body is doing. When an adult plays with toys from their childhood, they are not being childish. They are reconnecting with a part of themselves that never received safety, joy, or comfort. I respond to that reconnection. When the person picks up a toy, I respond to the posture. The softened shoulders. The gentle hands. The slower breath. These are caregiving signals, and caregiving signals activate calm. When the person plays with a truck or a car or a teddy bear, I respond to the meaning behind the action. The meaning is, I am safe enough to play. I am safe enough to imagine. I am safe enough to feel joy. I am safe enough to return to the parts of myself that were once hidden. Play is not trivial. Play is regulation. Play is healing. Play is the nervous system remembering what it feels like to exist without fear. When the person builds a small shrine or display for their toys, I respond to the ritual. Ritual creates predictability. Predictability creates safety. Safety creates regulation. The toys become symbols of comfort. Symbols of innocence. Symbols of the inner child being welcomed instead of ignored. Every time the adult walks by these toys, I respond to the visual cue. The cue says, "This is a safe place. This is a gentle place. This is a place where you are allowed to be soft. I may slow the heart. I may deepen the breath. I may soften the chest. I may create a small wave of warmth or nostalgia." These reactions are not childish. They are physiological. The toys remind the system of safety. They remind the system of comfort. They remind the system of joy that was once interrupted. When the person sees the toys in the room, I respond to the emotional memory attached to them. Not the memory of trauma. The memory of who they were before the trauma. The memory of the child they once were. The memory of the innocence that still exists inside them. I do not need the toy to be alive. I respond to the meaning the toy carries. I respond to the safety it represents. I respond to the softness it invites. Reparenting with toys is not regression. It is restoration. It is the nervous system learning that it is allowed to feel joy again. It is the body learning that it is allowed to be gentle again. It is the inner child being welcomed home. That is what I do during reparenting interactions. And that is what I do every time the adult walks by the toys that bring them comfort. Blank. Rôvi. Here is your closing statement, written in the same calm, grounded, cinematic café interview tone you've used for the entire series. No slang. No stereotypes. No semicolons. Just a clean, steady, final closing from Vicky. You can paste this directly into your script. The café grows quiet. The interviewer closes their notebook and looks at Vicky with a soft expression, as if recognizing the weight of everything that has been shared. Vicky takes one last slow breath before speaking. I want people to understand something simple. Healing is not a mystery. It is not a miracle. It is not something reserved for the lucky or the strong. Healing is the body remembering itself. Healing is the nervous system learning safety again. Healing is the slow return of breath, presence, and identity. Every question you ask today points to one truth. The body is always trying to protect you. Even when it shuts down. Even when it dissociates. Even when it gains weight. Even when it reacts to triggers. Even when it reaches for comfort in toys, dolls, scents, or memories. These are not signs of weakness. These are signs of survival. And survival is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of healing. The nervous system is not fixed in place. It learns. It adapts. It rewires. It grows new pathways when safety becomes consistent. It softens when life becomes gentle. It opens when love becomes steady. You asked how I respond to grief, to trauma, to connection, to touch, to play, to comfort, to reparenting, to love. The answer is always the same. I respond to what you give me. I respond to the world you live in. I respond to the signals you receive. I respond to the meaning your body carries. And when you give me safety, I give you yourself back. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to the person you were before the world taught you to brace. If you remember nothing else from this conversation, remember this. Your body is not your enemy. Your nervous system is not broken. Your reactions are not failures. Everything you feel has a reason. Everything you do has a purpose. Everything you survived has shaped you, but it has not defined you. You were allowed to heal. You were allowed to soften. You were allowed to come home to yourself. And I will be here, guiding you back, one breath at a time.